Call the special meeting in the town of Waterford Board to order, October 30th, 2023 at 1:01 p.m. This is for discussion and possible action of a side note, memo of understanding for private outside events for police officers. And then after that, the posting position for description for police chief. So we'll begin with the side note, the MOU. There was some discussion last time. I think everybody's got their notes. I think everyone also received an email from Tina from our insurance agent. So I'll open up if there's any discussion from anyone. I know we talked last time about possibly just providing a flat fee, so it didn't matter, you know, who was taking the job, and we wouldn't price ourselves out of the market. We had some talk about that. We had some talk about who would, you know, full-time, part-time. We had some discussion about the rotational schedule. So, you know, for discussion.
So I think last time we were here, the ball was kind of in the officer's court, I think. I could be wrong, but I don't know if you guys have had a chance to, sorry, you were there, I apologize. If you've had a chance to discuss this internally and what your thoughts are, but I think that was kind of where we left it, was seeing what your guys' thoughts were.
Yeah, so we talked, the prevailing, we'd be okay with using the prevailing part-time wage for the officers' pay for those events. We'd have to figure out a way to get it through in that FSL, make sure we get the FSLA okayed when we do the rolling list on that, and then we're good with a part-timers or full-timers getting, you know, say there's 4 positions, there'd be 2 full-timers, 2 part-timers, that would be get first crack at it. Say a fair or something wanted a lieutenant to supervise those 4 officers, they could then request a lieutenant position as well, and maybe that would maybe be if it's at the prevailing rate, or maybe a little bit higher to represent their supervisory authority in it as well. So that'd be something for, I think you could offer out to each of those groups to say, hey, we have police officers that are available, and if you would like a supervisor there as well, then this would be the rate, and we'd be okay with that. And then that seniority-based list for the full-timers and part-timers to be assigned to get first crack at it. And if they're not filled, then the full-timers would have to fill the shift.
Would that be part-time wage at time and a half, because it would be overtime?
Not if, though, so that's where we'd have to figure out the work week, if you're in a 14-day cycle or a 28-day cycle, how many hours each available officer has available in that FSLA cycle to work those events at regular time.
I thought they did it right now. It's anytime outside their normal shift. So
Let's say, so we
anytime.
would need, I think, some language saying this would count, to your point, and not towards that provision of triggering that.
Okay.
But then the other consideration is, yeah, the required overtime, even if you're outside of that provision, if it's required by law, we need to figure out how that works. And one thought I have, and it's up to them certainly, and likewise in the back here, but would be a selection process that maybe considers not assigning someone if there's an overtime amount that would be due, and you go to the next person on the list, you know, seniority wise, until you get to a point where overtime isn't required. Again, not necessarily something that is set in stone, but just an idea.
And I know tracking purposes, and it's hard, it's difficult, right? But I think that's the best way to get it through without having a budget for an overtime amount. So.
Yeah, so we do have some concerns about overtime. When you look at the budget, we have concerns about overtime, so we have to make sure we can afford this as a municipality. One of my other concerns that was brought up is with insurance, and I know we've talked about that before. The email we received from our insurance agency, is my understanding that if you're wearing the uniforms for a private event, you're representing Waterford, so more than likely our insurance would be the only coverage in place. These situations can be a can of worms if something happens. So I think this piece that we would have to get figured out as far as insurance liability, something that we need to discuss. So I know that I was told in the past is it Lieutenant Nelson, you're saying that, they carry their own insurances or,
These organizations have provided workers' compensation insurance prior to us having workers work the events, such as St. Thomas Fest was the big one. That before anybody was assigned there, that's what they were providing us. So the township was provided that, because the chief made sure that that's, same thing with the school, that workers' compensation was provided.
Well, I think some of the problem too was, if an officer gets hurt, how do you distinguish they got hurt at St. Thomas or they got hurt here? You know,
That we weren't provided those
right,
insurance, because I don't think all of them were being provided, were they?
Everyone was required to,
Oh, I thought last meeting they said only one or two of them did, but,
we wouldn't work them if they weren't.
Oh, okay,
providing that.
I was under a misunderstanding then, okay.
yeah, that would be something that we would need to be sure of.
So they provide the workman's comp, but like for liability and that, it would still be under our liability then.
yes. If they wear the uniforms, my understanding that they are representing Waterford, whether,
I think that's the untested theory that we're all afraid of, is that exact issue, that you could have a workers' comp from an outside provider, but whether your provider would agree that that is in fact going to take the place of it is an open question. And I think the same thing with just general liability as well. And the fact that your provider is indicating that wearing a uniform opens it up is kind of what I thought they would indicate. So to me, that suggests the workers' comp would probably fall the same way, where they would say, well, you're generally speaking, working within the scope of being an officer. So that would be definitely something to consider. And obviously, if we get this agreement in place, it takes care of that consideration as well.
I mean, I'd like to point out that we're not, as a supervisor, we're not looking for any more wages than the officers would be making, nor are we looking for any overtime.
If an officer was hurt working if you worked out something where they're working at the part-time prevailing wage, what you're talking, and they do become injured, then what do they get paid from there until their return to duty?
well, and if they are injured and out for a considerable amount of time, you're gonna have to pay somebody to come in
They're gonna be on workman's
and fill
comp,
the shift.
then they get their prevailing wage, or is it at the lower wage that they were working at?
Probably theirs, I would assume, because it goes off of like.
I'm just asking.
Good question.
But also the question is if we are allowed to have them say that they won't accept the time and a half, that's overtime, because that has never been.
As long as it's not legally required overtime, we could say that it's not they don't accept it, but if it's legally required, we can't bargain
So I
around that.
have a feeling it is, but.
Well, and that's where one thing we'll have to figure out is, the time period you guys use. If you use a 14 or 28-day period, you're gonna have a wider window of overtime. If you have folks who are working on that traditional 7-day, 40-hour schedule, then it's gonna be probably nearly impossible to get outside of the required overtime. So it really is gonna come down to what your work rotation is. Do you know, Chief, what you guys use? Is it a 28-day?
I don't know.
It's anything outside of their
Right, so
normal
they-
shift,
Yeah.
that's what they do.
Heather's correct,
Yeah.
and so is the chief, it's not gonna matter, it's
It's anything outside their
Outside.
normal shift,
That,
it's
that,
overtime.
that could be negotiated out in the side letter though.
Okay.
So that clause, we can, for conversation purposes, just ignore. If that's what.
Right now, the officers are, I'm sorry, sir.
Go ahead.
Right now, the officers are trading shifts, working shift for shift, not accepting overtime, so I don't see what the difference would be.
The more difficult one is the FSLA piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we
The
don't
law says you will pay time and a half for it.
especially if we don't know the threshold we're using, so we'll have to figure that piece out. And if you guys have the ability to adopt a 28-day or something between a 7 and 28-day period for specifically law enforcement, that will very likely give you some leeway in there that you could look to take advantage of with this setup.
Would that change then their normally how they would accumulate time and a half overtime?
Yes
just
and
for the
no,
special
likely
events?
not, because of the fact that every other type of overtime they get is gonna be pretty much mandated because it's outside of the contract. And so essentially you would just automatically pay overtime for that regardless. And it seems to me that this is the one narrow little sliver of overtime that would actually be paid due to the FLSA, because everything else is just contractual, which is
Okay.
fine. But essentially, it sounds like the only type of overtime that the contract actually triggers that the law would require.
And the workaround for that, like you mentioned, is a seniority list that incorporates, would this trigger overtime? Yes, okay, you're moved down to product.
Correct, and then, so just as an example, if you use a 28-day period, you get 171 hours in that period. So you get an additional 11 hours over a 4-week time period, essentially, to build in that overtime. And so, yeah, essentially what you would do is you'd look at how many hours has someone worked, are they over that 171? And frankly, because as well, you have a very rich contractually overtime based contract, you can use that to offset overtime hour for hour as well, which will actually put you further below that threshold. So essentially, yeah, that's the key thing is first you got to figure out what threshold are you using, and from there we can kind of figure out how, if at all, you can use that selection system. It becomes very administratively difficult, as you can likely tell, but it is possible.
Well, it's gonna be taxing on a supervisor, right, to figure it out.
You're gonna
I'm
have
sure
to,
they're abiding by it, but that means it's more time spent by the town for that person to sit and do it for an outside event.
And is it doable? Like,
We work 5-2, 5-3, we're paid every 2 weeks. I don't know I guess I don't understand what you're asking, other than what's in the contract. I mean, we're always paid 40-hour weeks.
so I'm guessing you guys probably use the standard 40-hour week schedule, which in your contract is just so rich in overtime, you haven't had to consider using a different time period. That's what I'm guessing, but I can dig further into that.
So with this agreement also, because I'm more of like the insurance part of it now. Are we able to write in there, like, how would we write in the fact that if somebody gets hurt really bad and they're out of work and, you know, it could end up, I know I won't be, popular, but it could end up costing money. I'm just kind of looking out the town
Yeah.
that way.
There's really no, unless you do it within the individual agreements you'd enter into with these entities where they are just full on taking that level of money.
Okay.
There's no way, unfortunately, to completely say with certainty
Sure.
that that cost would be passed on to somebody else.
Right,
But that'd be the way to do it, is to basically build into an agreement that if for some reason one of our officers gets injured,
right.
you vendor agree to pick up the costs that would be associated with that.
I mean, they've been doing this for a while and I don't foresee a problem at all, but, just kind
There's
of,
always at one time.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to the talk you guys were having last meeting about, does that cost you out of this? And is that, something that's, worth considering? But at the end of the day, yeah, that would be the way to consider approaching it.
To the board, as a follow-up from last meeting, one of the things, what you had asked me to do is a follow-up with the village and about possibly sharing costs between the town and the village for the high school events. The village president said that they were not willing to do that, that he overrode what the administrator had told me. And he said they are not willing to provide monies for the high school outside what they're doing now.
And he didn't take it to the board, but he just said that that's what
Correct.
he was, yeah. Any questions or discussion from anybody else?
Can we set this up like the MOU, any officer that wants to do outside work for a special event, it's this rate. It's under the workman's comp, whoever's providing it to us. It's, even though we have some exposure, they sign it. If something happens at an event, just like if somebody hurts themselves at home and they have to go on disability, all officers with disability they get it taken care of, correct? I mean,
That's what I was thinking.
because if they don't want to sign that agreement to work additional shifts for special events, then don't schedule them. Is that possible?
And so just to be clear, would that agreement be between the town and the employee, or that be between the actual town and the vendors? The
Well,
reason I asked,
we can work it any way we want to, I guess. I prefer the vendor and the police department, and to keep us out of it, but, we ultimately have to deal with everything that comes our way anyways,
sure.
but,
The only reason I was asking is that you can't by law contract around the workers' comp
well, no,
liability.
the contract around and stuff like that, but it's, again, I don't think we ever had a claim to doing this, how many years we've been doing special events, stuff like that, but there's always that case that can happen. I mean, obviously, if something does happen, we'll have to reevaluate it, but I think we're gonna keep discussing the same way and not moving forward unless we get something down in writing for all parties to agree with, you know what I mean? I think then this takes out the whole thing and, you know what I mean, I know you guys wanna bring in, it should be the full-time officers first, then the part-timers, then the senior. We don't have to deal with that then, you know what I mean? It's up to, you know, if the church, St. Thomas approaches chief or one of the lieutenants, and we want coverage for this, what can you do? Well, here's our agreement with you, that it's, you know, $35 per hour for any man hour there, if there's a cost to have a squad car there, they pay for that too. Whatever we need to do, you know what I mean? It's agreement between the police department and them, and it's a separate agreement. I don't think we have to involve all this union things, all three unions and all that kind of stuff. I think we're making it bigger than we have to make it.
So the issue you'd have there is I think there's still a good argument to be had that all the problems you guys are considering right now are present in that scenario, because basically what that's trying to do is to take the employment aspect out of it, which I think is, you can't unfortunately do. Because essentially what that approach does is to say, well, you're not actually working for us, you're doing this on your own outside of us. But as the insurance carrier said, that's actually the opposite view they would take. They would say, no, they are working for you, they are employees at this time. And that's where the negotiation part with the union comes back into it all, is to say, well, if they are our employees, then the town has to choose how these things are going to happen. Now, all that said, you could, as a town, propose to the union, both supervisor and patrol, to say, those terms, generally speaking, are what's gonna be provided, meaning that it's the event that chooses who's gonna be there. We don't dictate it, the chief doesn't dictate it. So some of those things absolutely could be in that type of agreement where you guys just take yourselves out of it and it's really the event. But some of the things that we've been talking about do have to be negotiated and part of that. So for example, just that selection process in and of itself, we do technically have to negotiate that with both patrol and supervisors. And so, you know, assuming they agree to it, that works, but if they don't, then we're back to where we've been essentially. So it's possible is the answer.
Yeah, we can't get agreement, then we just take ourselves out of it, right? You know, and so how about this, instead of doing the $35 wage, we do 40, officers agree to get paid $35 for special event, the $5 goes into a kitty in case we ever do have problems come up or something like that. You know what I mean, and that way we're covering a little bit all around, I mean.
That's certainly an option. Yeah, I mean, that's, again, something that is negotiable.
I'm just saying, we gotta, you know, you gotta do something to move this more important. I know the only event that's coming up is the Christmas parade in the village.
That's covered by the village. It's paid for
By the village, okay, so that one's the thing, but I don't think there's any other events coming up until next year that I'm aware of, so. We have some time, but it sounds like this is gonna happen quickly, because there's still research to be done, and stuff like that, so.
Yeah, well, and I can turn that around quickly. I think frankly, your timeline is more the events themselves, like you said, coming up. So that's probably the more natural cutoff you're facing.
Would an option, again, not a popular one with the full-time officers or the supervisors, but would an option be that if we're gonna be utilizing part-timers, that entity agrees to pay what that part-timer wage and benefits would be, and pays that to the municipality, and then that's how we would then pay the officer. I mean, so they're reimbursing the town for the time. It just leaves the supervisors and the full-timers out in the cold.
Well,
not having an
I
option.
understand, but we don't have enough part-timers to staff some of these events. And like I said, we have a special events wage, whether it's 35, 40, we can easily set up a payroll system, the code that pays, correct? Can we do that?
Nothing about their payroll is easy, and this
Well, I
would, this
understand
would
that.
not,
I gotta talk to the
this
board.
is only gonna complicate it even
We
more.
gotta go to an automated system and track all this stuff, DPW, everything. And we're way behind the scenes in our payroll accounting.
I don't,
It's just trying to figure out if it's doable for you guys to implement some of these things that they're talking about, because already we know how payroll is. And to add yet another layer of it, I don't know if it's something that you guys can implement.
I mean, before we even start talking about how she's gonna set up payroll, I mean, is anybody even close to, like Tim says, putting something down on paper?
Yeah, it's, I
Maybe
mean, it
the
sounded like the
clerk will work.
possible agreement was that we would take the part-time rate for anyone who would want to
Yeah,
agree to
right.
work it. Then that would be charged back to the person who decides to hire these folks. So I think the key question we still have not fully resolved is one of selection and exactly who is picked and how. I know we talked about possibly going down the list of seniority for patrol and saying if overtime is triggered, you go to the next person. But I know that in the last meeting, obviously, the supervisors would like some say in their involvement in that selection process as well. So that's still an open discussion point that we should probably visit before, yeah, we get too much further down the road on these other details.
Yeah, and I think at the last meeting, wasn't there pretty much an agreement with the prevailing wage?
Yes.
Would just be the overtime and how we would work around it.
I don't see how there is a way to work around it because their contract is, if it's 8 hours, or even for the part-timers, if it's over 8 hours or over 40, then it's time and a half. If it's officers, it's kicks in time and a half at 8 hours.
Part-timers
We don't.
This side letter would supersede that, so
Correct.
whatever that,
Right.
in this agreement for this particular scenario would
Right.
supersede whatever else is in the
Would be,
contract.
right,
These outside events would be outside of that overtime agreement,
Yeah.
inside the
It
contract.
would just be what federal government mandates.
Correct,
then-
and like you said, you have 11 hours if you go to a 28-hour week, plus FSLA laws that allow you to exempt, sick time, vacation time, all your benefit time out of that, so that even reduces that overtime threshold more on that federal standard, so that's why you can really, you have a lot of hours to work with before you hit that 171, if you go to a 28-day period.
Mhm.
So, and that's really all you gotta do is claim it on that, through that, and then there's Article 7 or whatever.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, as long as you follow the typical things of what a 207K requires, i.e. use 28 days to figure out overtime, you can use it. There's no specific requirements.
They need to change the contracts, right? Because like she said, it's 5.2, 5.3 now. You're talking about changing the,
No, you can still use that. The only distinction that really comes out is when overtime by law is required, and because your contract requires overtime in different fashions, much more
They would override
aggressively.
it.
Exactly,
Except for the memo of understanding for doing outside events.
exactly. This is really, these unique events are the only thing that are impacted here.
so I just wanna be clear, not only would the event itself not put them in overtime, but would that be excluded from all their hours, so that wouldn't push them into overtime during the regular hours? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that would be when in my mind, I guess, when I'm thinking about the selection process, you would say, okay, this person has X amount of cushion before they hit overtime. And this event is going to be however many hours, does it fit within that cushion? And then if yes, where the overtime, to your point, doesn't get incurred because of it, then you'd say this person's eligible, we're gonna give them the option to work it. Whereas on the other hand, if working the event puts them into that threshold all of a sudden, and there's another option where you can say, no, this person that wouldn't happen with, you then go down the list and give it to that next person.
Yeah.
That's what I envision at least.
Okay, so we've already established that they would have workers' comp, that they're not acting as an employee. But if they're paid, it goes towards retirement. So aren't we essentially now saying that they are an employee and have superseded that agreement?
Yeah, well, so to be clear, they're an employee in all these instances. It's just a matter of what are we paying them. But you're right that this is WRS reportable time. And so that's part of what you'd be assessing. If you want to get full freight back from the event, you would assess that back to the event.
Which is about $5 more an hour.
Yeah.
Sure, so yeah, basically that's gotta be factored into whatever
So
we,
then we'd be at 40 an hour.
42. I think.
Essentially, yeah.
So basically it comes down to who's gonna get selected and how they're gonna do
Chief selected?
One is, are they gonna price themselves out at $40 an hour?
No idea.
Are you gonna price yourself out at $40 an hour?
42.
42, I would assume so.
it. What's part-time now? 35?
32.
Well,
32? What
coming
are
in
they gonna be?
January, when it goes like, what, 33.73 or something for a part-time officer, I thought we were all in agreement that we would say that would be the wage period. And if that,
So at 40, it'd still be under the.
Plus the $5.
But they have,
Plus
they have to
$5
cover
Well,
WRS. and-
Yeah,
Now,
because the
yeah,
town,
it's-
So you'd be roughly $40 an hour.
that extra kicker is gonna make a big difference.
Yeah,
but it's what the town's contributing for this officer.
Well, I understand that, and that's where I think that's where the problem's gonna lie with the vendor. And if that's gonna cost us these positions, which it probably will, but we can kind of lock that for a second, but go into selection. And we in our group, we're hoping to put forth something where it was a fair rotation for these positions, since we're all getting paid the same, then it doesn't, go automatically to everyone but us. It would be a fair rotation like it had been done for many, many years and all that, and we kind of conceded that in this last contract. But this being a separate thing, not a normal contractual assignment, that it go back to the rotating basis, not just when a supervisor is needed, but period, whatever it is. It's a fair way of doing it, because it's been fair for decades, and we like to see that be reinstated as a fair way of getting this assignment. And would simply be by seniority and rotating through.
My argument would be is, as a supervisor, they moved up the ranks, they have a certain job duty to do. And when those, if they request a supervisor at one of these events, the full-time officers or part-time officers would not be able to fill that supervisory role. I believe there's 2 supervisors here, and if you have an event with 4 or 5 officers, in general, you should have 1 supervisor there supervising those 4 to 5 officers. To keep it fair, I know what they're saying, seniority down, but that's gonna mean, if you're a lieutenant, normally you're the highest senior person in the rank, right? And then I'm always gonna get first dibs at this.
No,
No,
not at all, not even close.
So, but as a lieutenant, they have rights. It's just like you're not gonna give a patrol officer a lieutenant's duty. You shouldn't be giving a lieutenant's duty. Asking a lieutenant, shouldn't be having a lieutenant do what a patrol officer does, just in case. And our contract is very clear how overtime is assigned.
our job duties, as they are now, we do supervisory duties and patrol duties. That's exactly what we do.
There's no different.
And we're not asking for anything different, nor are we asking to be treated any differently in these events.
Unfortunately, the way the contract's written for us is full-time officers, part-time officers, and supervisory
But this would
personnel.
be a side letter that doesn't have anything to do with that contract. It would be,
Well, it's a side letter that has to be agreed to
Correct.
infringe upon the contract that's already in place.
correct, and it would be in other ways too, the big reason being the wage.
And we all agree that the rate, I mean, there's no wage savings to have a supervisor. I mean, if the supervisors wanted to work for $20 an hour, I'm sure the cops would be like, oh, we'll let them. But we're saying the prevailing wage, and then have the patrol officers, according to contract, have that rank. We're allowing in the side letter to say, hey, they need 4 officers, let's have 2 full-time, 2 part-time. If they request a supervisor, or if the chief deems that a supervisor is necessary for that event, he could have 1 supervisor on our supervisory list rotating through the events as well.
How many offers do you have, like at St. Thomas and at Spanky's?
There's like half a dozen at the,
River Rhythms,
church festival. There's 2 at the Spanky Blue.
River
Rhythms
Rhythms
is typically
is
2.
going to be paid by the village.
oh, the village, oh, okay, yeah.
Well, was that
They
changed?
want 1, yes, they want 1.
Well, so the village president didn't change his opinion on that then?
He felt that it was now it's, the perception is it's a village event.
Okay.
And that he believes that they should be covering that, because it's in their park and set up in this stuff and such as by the village. So, but he will do one officer for that event.
So the only event where you would really need supervisory personnel would be at St. Thomas.
Oh, and the parades and car shows.
Not the parades. Parades are paid for by the
Well,
municipality.
he just asked the question.
Okay.
Parades are, this is a reminder, the parades are paid by 4th of July, and the Christmas parade are paid contractually by the village. And I believe that's the only 2 events that either municipality has agreed to pay, other than River Rhythms.
How many officers usually are at the parades? There's quite a few, right?
Yeah.
All hands.
Summer, the 4th of July, it's usually what, 18-ish,
Everybody can get,
20?
So the village pays for all of the officers?
yes.
Town usually kicks in for 1, they offer to pay 1.
Yeah,
And then the
there's everybody
Christmas
on deck.
parade is much less, but not, maybe 10.
They're still blocking off roads, and
Right.
they've still got a lot
It's
of.
a shorter distance, but yes.
Yeah.
And because of unfortunate events, they've increased staffing, so,
Can't blame them.
correct.
How many are usually requested at like St. Thomas?
It starts on that Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Uh-huh.
It's 4 on Thursday, 6 on Friday, 6 on Saturday. And they don't request a supervisor. They just want 4 law enforcement officers on Thursday, 6 on Friday, 6 on Saturday.
Okay.
And that's it. They don't differentiate, they don't ask. So that's where they're at with that scheduling request. And that's due to the bands.
What are the hours they're requesting, the 4, 6, and 6?
They usually turn out to be 7-hour shifts. Sometimes 6 hours, depending, it's supposed to end between midnight-ish, depending on the crowd, depending on the draw. We've been very flexible with them in the 2 years we've had the contract. So it's rainy or terrible, or, I mean, we're willing to be flexible with them. So that's another thing too, that we are, if you're gonna go with a ironclad contract thing and I put out a schedule for 6 hours and they cancel us, we cancel. We don't want to have the officer's part and say, well, you said 6 hours, I want 6 hours. No, we're at the mercy of the, event organizer.
Yeah, didn't you say, was President Houston talking about the village paying for river rhythms
Yes, they're paying for 1 officer
for one?
per event, per river
How
rhythm
many do we
event.
normally have at the rhythms?
2, was 2 before.
So you have
That's a
one in the
3-hour
village squad.
If there's a village squad on, yes, they would have 2 people available.
River Rhythms event is a 3-hour event. 2 officers for 3 hours.
So that, I mean, then it's not part of this whole discussion,
Yeah,
that
we're
are the
just-
parades.
I just remind,
So is it, we're just down to St. Thomas Fest, is basically all we're,
Spanky,
all Spanky for? Nice.
High school?
Lions Clubs,
Lions
Lion Club
Club.
events,
Celebrate Waterford.
Celebrate Waterford, Tractor Cade.
just to bring it up too, and I know that there was a donation made, which was awesome. But we need to maybe start including the Lions Club and things like this as well, if we're gonna continue to have big events. Figure out all of these, from Spanky's, St. Thomas, Lions Club, to make sure that they're all covered, they're all under that umbrella.
I think with the Lions Club events, the picnic in the park and the Easter egg hunt are pretty minimal. I could see the municipality, if you so choose to cover that. It's just the other ones that are more taxing, and that's what you guys gotta decide, but not saying all 5 events that they have are major.
Well, if the retirement portion of this is gonna kick it up to $42 an hour and price us out, or the officers consider taking $30 an hour, and then it'd be $35 total with ETF to try to preserve being able to fund these,
We have our union with.
Our union would, 100%.
That's fine. It'd be okay with it.
Well, currently the part-time wage is 32.
Right, but then it's a percentage of that is the retirement, it's not
Right, which
straight
is-
5.
Correct, it's 14.32%. It will be for 2024, but I don't recall, I didn't know they're gonna talk about their wages. What was the percentage increase for part-time for 2024?
3%.
3? But you guys would just say a flat 30?
Fine, I'll talk to them. See what they're talking about.
4%.
430.
It was 4%.
4% next year, in January.
But remember, you're gonna be
Okay.
forced to do it.
But if they agree to just 30,
Are we? See, that's the thing. I'm not gonna have you guys force it.
I'd like to ask,
then it would be 430 an hour.
What do they pay now?
yeah,
What are you charging, or what did they pay you guys this year?
We're billing out at 32 an hour for special events.
so how do we know what other, how do we know if we're pricing ourselves out? How do we know what other security places are charging? Or,
Well, with discussions with St. Thomas personnel, Blaze, and the sheriff's office had it forever.
Yeah.
And we just took on what their rate was. In fact, they were charging 30, they were charging less than us. And then when we went to 30, from 30 to 32, they agreed to the 32, and then we kept it at that. And I already told them that, you know, there's gonna be an increase from the part-time wage. I told them it's gonna be like $1 something, and they were okay with that back in the summer. So that's kind of how that came.
Okay.
So like Heather figured it out, that'd be, it's over about $34, 34.30 an hour.
Just for $30 an hour, and then the retirement would come to $34.30 an hour.
That's about 35.
Yeah. But were you talking about adding on more for
No, I
liability?
wouldn't, I don't, I'll make this, I'd like to see our police department at events, stuff like that. So I think Dale's got a very good proposal. And
30
then,
an hour, but we would be charging 35 to cover the
35,
retirement in that. So we really wouldn't be making any money either, it would sort of be a break even.
Yeah.
One issue for the officers being forced to work at that rate would be an issue. So if they're not volunteering for that rate, they're being forced to.
No.
well, then
We wouldn't.
we can't do it then. So I don't think we have to force anybody for special.
We're not
events.
forcing anybody to do
No,
anything.
they don't wanna work it, don't work it. I mean,
That- that
Right,
would be-
but if we commit to 6 people at St. Thomas and, you know, only 5 should sign up, we have to fill the 6th
Just
You
person.
don't have to, you
Just
can put a
like Marvel
provision in
X
there,
rolls
just
down
saying,
there,
we'll do our best to fill all positions, and it covers that. I mean, we don't know, just like we're flexible with them, if it rains that day, we don't send 6 schedules.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a give and
That
take.
could be, that's a give or take,
We could have 3 people on workman's comp.
you don't know.
We don't do FICA on the, yeah.
Heather's figuring out.
Yeah, I mean, if you request 6, we can come back with what we can do and.
Yeah.
They've been fantastic based on that.
All of the senators have been fantastic.
I don't see that even a thought, and we wouldn't force anybody to work, so that's off the table. I think that discussion was.
Yeah, the contract was for voluntary.
Well, it is, I mean, I know you're to do something, you're not gonna do it, you're not gonna do it.
Right.
And I'm just, I've had a contract.
It'd be 3660 FICA.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we would have a special, memo of understanding where they could be employed by the
I
school
did that
district.
right, I just, $30 times
7.65.
Someone reads the the school district to one from or to be employed by the school district. That's what, Chief Johnson was talking about, that, the village or.
It was school district, not the village.
Right.
I'm sorry, I wasn't.
There was something on the one we had last time that we talked about, it said, MOU may be entered with the school district to allow the town of Waterford police officers to be employed by the school district for special event coverage.
Yeah. that's-
Correct. I wasn't gonna go into this, to Dr. Francois and propose anything when I didn't know
Right.
where we're at.
Okay, so we're looking at the $30 wage, which brings it up to 35, which is what we would ask to cover the insurance.
Actually brings it up
Would
to
be-
37,
I'm sorry,
37 for payroll taxes.
37.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's
So-
FICA.
Heather,
Just keep it at 35, we can
if
each
Dave
do
works, is it a different retirement amount, WRS?
Well, that's what I
amount than
mean, like the town has to decide if we're gonna be
Part-timer
willing, you know, to eat any. Heather and I
No,
are
once you're in
talking to
retirement,
schools.
it's automatic the
I
same,
know,
yeah.
When you guys decide.
But we need to know the total, so thanks for bringing that up.
Well, that was,
Yeah.
thanks,
So-
Bob, I
Yeah.
didn't think of that.
What was the total on 37?
37.
3660, so round it to 37.
Or are we willing to lower our payroll to so it goes, because it meets the $35 threshold, I think that would be something that would be fair to those vendors.
You go 28,
Yes, sir.
28 plus 7.
You're going $4
Keep it-
backwards?
keep going.
At what,
I guess
at what point,
We're this close to.
at what point are we,
Right.
They're trying to go backwards, so
Disqual- yeah.
35 is what they're gonna
I
charge.
know, but at what point do we say our police services are worth
Right.
this amount of money?
That is up to your officers, whether they.
We would not agree to anything less than 30, and we would want that any police work that would be assigned to be followed by the contract if we go below 30. So,
So Lieutenant Nelson, in working with 35 be workable with,
37.
I mean, 37, yeah.
I believe if I presented it properly to the vendors and explained kind of how this is all working, I think they would be okay with it.
Which,
I think we've developed a very good relationship with them over the years. where they trust us and they know that they're not being bamboozled. And this has been very transparent by having this open session, so that was a great move by the board. And, so I think that's, they can look at.
I'd like to ask, what do the officers union have to do? I mean, the part-timers before caused contracts not to be passed.
Yeah.
So are the part-timers and the full-timers going to have to agree to this? Is it a majority? Does it have to be unanimous?
It will have to be a majority, and we'll be able to get, and like I said, I have to have a discussion with the part-timers and the full-timers. At some point, the bylaws are gonna be voted on to solve some of those issues,
But not right now.
but not at this point. There's a process to that where we also have to get to based on constitution and bylaws for the association. But I think I'd be able to get the part-timers agreement with this and get a majority if we're, as long as we're doing the $30 an hour, have the, full-timers, part-timers on that rolling list or whatever, and then supervisors as assigned by the chief to monitor the events.
Okay.
But the one big thing is gonna be that full rotating seniority list. It's, they made a decision to separate and create their own union by thus creating their own seniority list in their position that they're in right now. And we're gonna stick with seniority lists within our bargaining unit.
I was just gonna say that issue right there that he ended with is the one that still needs to get ironed out in my mind, because there's discrepancy between both units, and to avoid a grievance down the road, I think you guys need to come to some kind of harmony in how that selection process is gonna be.
Is there a current department policy that says if so many officers are on shift, that they're at a specific event, that there has to be a supervisor?
No, there's not a town policy.
Is that a department policy that would be worth looking into?
I don't know if we would be able to, because it still may violate their working agreement. If it's a
No,
six.
because if the chief says they need a supervisor, it's up to
So
the
then
chief.
if their place is asking for 6, then they get 5 spots and then one is supervisor. I thought there was some language put into this last contract about
There's
the traffic programs.
You can take a look. But yes, best policing practice says if there's 4 or 5 officers, you'd want an individual supervisor there to monitor the event versus your actual patrol supervisor, who would then be taken away from the village or the town and have to supervise that event. So, and I think that's kind of how you make it fair. They're gonna get overtime. In schools, I would imagine in the high school, they have 4 officers there. One of those would probably be a supervisor, right, to make sure that the officers are properly supervised.
No, and there's no pay discrepancies. We're all paid the same. We all
Correct.
do the same job.
But we have different ranks. If they were
Rank is a
insubordinate,
title.
but if they were insubordinate to you during one of these events, they would be brought up on charges of insubordination, which means you are a supervisor. It doesn't matter on pay.
Who gets paid the same that they do in that event?
Correct.
And does the same job
But,
and gets paid the same.
but you have the rank, you can give orders,
We have the title. correct?
you can give orders, give discipline, and they have to listen to those orders, which would mean they're a
For the same
supervisor.
wage.
For the same way, that would you agree to?
Correct.
I'd be happy to say that you should be paid $1 or 2 more an hour as a supervisor. of
We
that
don't want
event.
it. We just want to get paid the same, do the same job and move forward with this whole discussion.
But with
Fair,
the rank that they would achieve, they'd have to basically say, we're gonna demote for these events down to police officers, rejoin the bargaining unit for police officers and work at that rate. And that's, otherwise they're lieutenants, they're working as lieutenants of police, which can order discipline, give job orders. And so they, that's what I'm saying, to be fair, if there's 4 officers needed, let's make one of them a supervisor, right? And then there are a couple events that only have 2 officers. That is what it is, but I would imagine the majority of the hours that are being sold out to these private events are requesting more than 4 officers.
So for my purposes, if we did go by seniority, where do you guys sit?
I was just to say, can we get a seniority list?
We can provide you the list, yes. He's number one of the.
No, I'm second from the top and John's somewhere towards the middle bottom.
I'm like, I got 480.
So you're saying you wouldn't want the lieutenants to be in the seniority rotation?
Right.
Correct.
to scheduling these events?
It would just be my choice or the chief's choice to say, if there's 4, we're putting 1 as a supervisor.
What if there's like 3, you could say there's 2 officers and a supervisor, right?
Good, or you say it's
Sure.
3 officers and.
Or there's 2, 1 and 1, you know what I mean?
Correct.
Yeah, leave it the way it is.
I think it's the discretion of.
The discretion of the chief, if he feels that a supervisor is needed at that scene,
And that's
that's
not
fine. I
a
mean, the only,
grievable decision and.
the only thing we would have an issue with if he says we need 2 supervisors and he's not, the supervisor term supervising anybody, then he would
Correct.
say you're going beyond and around the contract or the side letter. So,
So then if there's an event that only has 1 or 2 people, there'd never be a lieutenant there.
correct.
Oh, I could make.
Unless the chief said it.
Unless the chief said there'd be
Yeah,
a,
unless the chief
but he,
said something.
well, the 1-person event, no, because who's that supervisor supervising?
Yeah.
There's no one there, but a 2-person
understand that.
event, if you wanted to say, I want a supervisor there to,
Yeah, the newest officer was working with the supervisor, I see that, fine.
so, and we'd be open to
Chief,
that.
I'd leave that alone.
Lieutenants were the first to say they would take the lower wage. I think it's, some
I'm
people
in a-
are quite fair about this.
To keep it even, I think we should do the 30, like, whatever they want, and the 35. For like St. Thomas, it'd be a 224 hit to the town. Okay, again, are we gonna do nickels and dimes here? To have our officers present at a big community event? I think we can eat $224. That's my 2 cents, quickly adding it up by the shifts that Lieutenant Nelson mentioned. Keep it, if you can get more, great, that's fine, but I'm just saying, I don't wanna lose us being out here in any of our events. We don't have as many as other places do, keep what we got.
I'll agree with you on that. The only thing I'm sort of fighting with is the seniority. I can see their contract, but I can also see one's high, but the other one's middle rotation.
Yeah, these contracts were all.
One, to that point, that's the concern for what it's worth, is there's language in both contracts that speak to different selection processes for these 2 different events. So that's where,
So this is an MOU, we can draft whatever we want in this MOU. If they don't wanna work it, they don't have to work it. If they don't wanna work it, they don't have to. And if we can't do it, we just gotta tell the vendor, I'm sorry, we're not gonna help.
no, that's true. The key thing is you need both parties to agree to the MOU, but yes, exactly, that's fair enough.
Yeah, but I do agree with Dale that they're willing to take a lower rate.
I think that's wrong. If the officer gonna stand at $30, let them stay at $30.
No, that's already been done. Now,
Yeah.
this can't get into the rotation if the officers don't allow it. Officers union doesn't allow it. So
Well,
that
they
seems
would
unfair.
get into rotation, it's because it's up to the
It's up to the chief.
chief or head of the agent or interim chief or chief.
Head of the department.
Or it's gonna come in effect with like river rhythms, where there's, in the past, the 2 lieutenants always worked, but it can't be that way.
No, it's only 1 and that's paid by the village, so.
Yeah, or if there's car on or whatnot, or if River wants to pick up the other officer. Who knows if they wanna do that?
They want to pay it as a part-timer to work it, but I don't know how that's gonna.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll do that or not.
So chief, you're saying if you wanted to assign one of the lieutenants to River Rhythms, you could do that?
No, because it's 1 person, I would not do that as a supervisor, to supervise nobody.
Yeah.
I would, we're talking at 2 or 3 really events or more. Or personnel per event.
Tim, how many people usually are at the car show, the balloon fest, the Fourth of July parade?
Well, first time we did the Blue Fest, that was bigger, and we needed highway thing, and I think county came out too, I don't remember. We never expected it to be that big, so,
It's 6, we had 6 assigned to River 2 Balloon Fest.
yeah, 6, I mean, we didn't know what to expect, you know what I mean, so, depending on the rate of the day, you have nothing.
You were
So,
asking for attendees.
huh?
Were you asking for attendance?
Oh, it tended to be a lot.
No, no, I'm saying how many officers were typically assigned?
Yeah, John knows, he set it up, we had six per day probably.
For the car show?
Yeah, we had nothing for 7, nothing for the day before, nothing
Our
like
show
that.
and Balloon Fest were about, they were parallel.
Staff
overlap. We tried, yeah, it wasn't 6 for the whole 12 hours.
Yeah.
We had some, like, I'd say if you were to get like an average, it would average about 4.5 for the 12-hour shift.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and again, that's why we should donate, I mean, if the board elected to pay, we can go that, but the same thing with the fire department, they wanted to give us a $2,000 bill, we said, we'll call 911. I mean, that's what we all pay our taxes for. So I'd rather have a present to avoid things, but if we're gonna nickel and dime these events, everybody's right to call 911, they gotta show up.
This is at least.
At a previous employer, we had, when special events came up, we had a roster. It was initially started based on seniority or rank. And then when the top person signed up for a special event, they got dropped at the bottom. So it's now a rotational basis. And so if you keep signing up, you keep dropping to the bottom. And if all the people above you don't sign up, you can stay on that bottom and keep doing the special events. It doesn't address all of the concerns about, potentially having just a supervisor at an event. But it also opens up opportunities that it sounds like they might otherwise be shut out of. It's not a perfect solution, but it's something at least to be entertained in discussion.
So a lower seniority employee will get a chance to get it. The top ones can't always grab it then.
Correct.
That would be the most fair.
Just like we used to do.
And
Okay, that is.
And with that, it was at the Guard, so I was qualified to fly the airplane from either the left seat or the right seat, which meant I could sign up for either the left seat or the right seat, making me qualified for 2 positions for the same event. Whereas somebody who is only qualified for 1 seat could only sign up for that seat. So much like your situation, you would be qualified as either a supervisor or as patrol. But if you get picked for one, you're at the bottom of the entire list, not just for that seat.
And that's how we rotated events in the past, grants in the past. There was a rotation and it worked just fine.
If it were a single officer event, clearly we would secede and just
Right.
pass on.
So, yeah, I think,
The rotating list, we're open to that.
Okay.
But we need to make sure that it's properly done. I guess the complaints from the officers is these events seem to have always been filled by the 2 lieutenants. And then if they couldn't do it, and it was like, all right, who's gonna do it? And pick somebody to do it. So I guess the basic point is we need to have a fair and equitable way that, and it has to be administered consistent.
So I think my thought is to get to that point is just very clearly spell it out in the MOU where all 3 of us
Exactly.
are in agreement to what does this process look like, and then that way, because it's clear, if it's not followed, that allows for a pretty straightforward grievance for someone to say it wasn't followed. So I think that makes sense,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think it just requires a lot of clarity in the side letter.
If the chief were to designate that we require a supervisor, that is a supervisor slot, whoever signed up for that gets that supervisor, which takes away 1 slot from the patrol, but that guy now goes down on the bottom. And so next time, if there are only 3 positions and they're all available for patrol, that 1 supervisor is no longer in the running. Now, different one might be, but
And I'd like,
Until they hit the bottom.
yeah, and if we do that, I'd like to put a number. Like what would the chief would think, how many supervisors per officer? If we're gonna do this, let's spell it out so it's very clear, so that we're not playing one supervisor to one
His
officer.
decision, why micromanage it?
Because we're open to the rolling list, adding the lieutenants in. Where they could backfill a patrol officer if they're on that list, right? We're not micromanaging, we're saying, what's best police practice? You need 1 supervisor to manage 1 cop, or do you need 1 supervisor to manage every 3 cops? So if the event has over 6 people, you maybe have 2 supervisors. If it's under 6 people, you have 1 supervisor. And if it's
I see
under,
nothing wrong if there's a 2-person show and we have a newer officer, give the lieutenant to work with somebody on a slower event.
correct, but now that lieutenant's gonna be bumping up over that rolling list that we're looking at, gonna be bumping up over all those full-time and part-time officers because it's now his duty. We're open to the rolling list, but I think we have to then spell out
There's not enough events to where that would be even
Yeah, we're talking St. Thomas and Spanky, that's the big ones, and a couple, 2 Lions events.
It's 4 events a year.
So,
yeah,
in the high school.
High school, I think.
We've
Yeah.
struggled to get people to go to high school every year.
okay, so I think what we've got is, you guys are willing to take the $30 an hour, which would actually translate to 37.
But
To
we
cover for
charge the
insurance and
35.
FICA,
Yeah.
correct? And we put it on a rotation. So it'd be fair and equitable for everyone. I think that kind of answers our questions about the insurance. Any other questions or concerns?
Who's gonna come up with a list, the rotating list of seniority,
I think the
We
department will.
basically have one right now.
Yeah, I mean, we can provide them.
Okay.
Yes, list, and then whenever someone volunteers for the event, they would just drop to the bottom.
Okay.
So,
That needs to be in writing.
Straight seniority. Now let me ask you this, since we're having So you've got straight seniority as far as full-timers, straight, you know, and then you got seniority as part-timers. I mean, how are we're gonna work this in, like, cause we're all in the mix together. And I don't wanna differentiate again, full-timers, part-timers, supervisors. We'll just go department seniority, period, correct?
Yep.
Date of hire.
Yeah, it's
whether
fine
you're
because it's
full-time,
because it's
part-time.
rotating, it doesn't matter.
Right.
But
Date of hire.
my
Whether it's
suggestion is
part-time or full-time.
everybody, data hire,
That's fine.
doesn't matter. That would be my suggestion, our suggestion.
As long as it's rolling and it resets, it will reset once every calendar year to the top senior person.
Right.
So
That way, so every year of events, it just starts over and then.
No, that's fine, it's, doesn't matter if you're full part-time, it's your data hire.
With so few events, I would just keep that list rolling, because if you only have 4 events and it resets every year, you're gonna end up with the same problem, the same people getting it.
Some people get it.
Keep the list rolling, is that an administrative nightmare or no? Or is that
You
good?
just don't update it if nobody moves.
From year to year, you're saying.
And the way we did it, obviously you're free to discuss however you choose. When somebody new came in, they got put at the bottom and worked their way up.
Can we come to an agreement that, so the list is followed, we have this list in place. 4 people are picked off of it by seniority, someone from their, local can look at it and say, yes, I agree with it. So we don't get 2 more events down the road and say, oh, that was actually messed up 3 events ago. Now I want back pay because I missed it.
Yeah, and I think that would be covered. Yeah, yes, I think that's a good idea, but the grievance timelines would only allow a 10-day.
Okay, but you know, just for instance, that, so we're keeping,
But yes, I think assign one patrol officer to say, yes, that's correct on each event. and then-
Or me.
Still. The union stewards could both look at it and say,
you
yeah.
have no
it's good.
problem with that, I think it'll work out.
Yeah, but there are 6 or 7 river rhythms alone, so there's.
That's
quite a
not
few events.
part of
That's
this.
not common.
That's not part of
It's
the
not?
somewhere, nope, the village is.
It's not the MOU, that's gonna be paid by the village, so they're
Oh,
actually a
there's
town
only one officer
employee.
by the village.
So we have to do it,
Yeah.
that has to go by a seniority list.
Yeah.
But that has to go by the CBA, because it's separate,
That's
Mhm.
not.
separate event,
Those aren't gonna be the seniority list then.
not what we're just speaking of.
No, this is just for this outside.
Yeah,
event, so-
like Spanky St.
Thank you for the
Thomas.
clarification. Okay.
Spanky St. Thomas, Lions, Balloon Fest, car
Right.
show,
Yeah. Great.
the parade.
Okay, so we've got the 30, 37 that covers insurance, like, the town's not gonna be, responsible for any of that, so we've got all that covered. Do you think that's a fair wage? Think that would be okay on the rotational basis? Any other discussion or comments?
Is the board gonna come up with a letter saying this is what the town is charging, and then when these places come, say, okay, here's our stance on
Yeah,
it,
we
the
can
town stance.
do that soon, so we can get that out, so they can have time to, because I don't know what time they start contacting you about.
January.
I was gonna say, have it out before January, because New Year, they're gonna be working on
St.
this.
Thomas wants it all locked in, like, right after the first of the year.
Okay.
For one thing, what about the Speedway grants with the rotation? Is that,
That's covered
That's
under the
contract,
CBA.
That's in the contract.
okay.
It's paid at full
That's
police
the
rate.
way
and-
it's 702, wherever that is, okay,
This is just for the outside events.
okay.
All right.
Serena, are you gonna draft that, like in the CBA, then we can just give them a copy of?
Yep,
this
so I was just
MOU?
gonna say, so what I'm planning was to update the side letter you guys are working off of and then circulate it between the 3 groups here. And then basically everyone, once they sign off on it, we should be good to go.
And then we can give that to these entities, right? That should,
Correct,
I would
yeah,
think should work.
yeah.
That would be a letter.
Yeah, we can't, you can't.
Oh, sorry, to the outside entities, yeah, so the
Right.
outside entities, you create a separate document for
Just a
like
separate-
this,
okay.
right, to say this is the agreement you guys are gonna enter into with the town. But
Okay.
once you have that set in stone, it will change very little from event to event with a few details here and there.
Okay.
But I can help with that too.
Okay, but it's 37, right? Not the 35, it's 37.
Correct, 37.
Okay. Great.
So we have to wait till it's written
Inclusive
down.
of retirement and.
And the FICA.
To help them draft it with these terms.
So yeah, once we get the side letter locked in, I can help draft that type of document for you guys.
Make a motion that allowing Ryan or, to work on that. I think, why don't we, if someone could, do a motion to allow Attorney Tate, to draft up the proposal for the $30 or $37. Rotation schedule, just so we have something.
And the part-time.
You want it that the union steward will verify your rotation.
I'll make a motion to that. Yeah, and have the stewards be able to look at it on a timely basis, so there's no.
And to keep the list rolling year to year and not start over.
Okay.
You don't have any motion, I don't know. I was just taking notes, so I didn't know.
We have second.
I'll second the motion, but I don't think that we ever has it down.
So for the record, the motion made by Supervisor Schwartz is to,
$30 an hour to update the stuff into that.
Why don't we just make a motion that allows them to draft the MOU and then
Okay.
draft the MOU?
From the notes, from the notes you took.
Yeah.
How's that?
Dale seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for all your time and efforts, and thank you guys for working things out, and we want to be there for the community.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
Alright.
I'm just
Next
gonna,
thing on the list. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Ryan. And I'm just really impressed,
I am trying to keep it.
Brian, I'm just really impressed I didn't have to remind you to come today.
Wow, through your-
Okay, the next item we have is the discussion of possible action regarding the position posting, posting description for a police chief. I don't know if all of you have in front of you, I've got something that Tina sent over, which was a sample posting.
Yep.
There were several, yes.
yeah, that one was from 2007 when.
Yeah.
Former Detroit was hired.
Oh, I have a different one.
This is the one from 2007, I believe.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's in
Yeah,
2007.
I've got that.
so,
That one was taken off of Wiley Net.
Oh, that one there, yeah, I read it, but I haven't heard a copy of it.
Tim, do you have this one, this longer one?
I have it on my computer, yes.
I had it on my computer at home with me.
No,
That's
I didn't
fine.
print it
So-
because it's sort of standard.
Yeah,
Yeah, if I could just, after speaking, with Chief, I don't know if the board wants to put in there, I don't think the original from 07 talked about a working chief. Are we gonna have him do administrative?
Yes.
Are you gonna go on the road, he or she?
Well, I think we should always, if they can go on the road,
Mhm.
they're gonna be out in public too, just like our lieutenants are, they're the,
Oh, I agree. I think
they're the
we'll
face of the department.
yeah.
put that in the
We're not a
job.
huge department, we have 8 officers, so,
Yes, so there's outside,
yeah, and I would put at the direction of technically the town board is its
yes.
superior, would be the chair or the liaison and the entire board. That's what I've changed with the police chief from superior, Wisconsin, make sure that wording is under the direction of the town board.
Yeah.
Is the board only gonna post on Wiley Net? Okay, well, we don't have access to Wiley Net. That's something that has to come from the police permit. I figure if they know what they're looking for, I can only give an idea of.
Well, I would have Supervisor Villain as the liaison or the chair, direct one of the lieutenants to post it on my line, and only go to one of them, that way you know who not.
Oh, yeah.
And as soon as things come in, they share with those 2 people, or if there's a committee that can be reviewing anything.
Yeah,
I highly think, I mean, I ran into our old chief the other day at the VFW meeting, is, you know, he recommended getting, like we've done in the past, a committee of 2 or 3
Mhm.
area police chiefs to do this, because I don't know the position, I'm not an officer.
Mhm.
But we have to get that out sooner than later, so when these things start coming in, we're ready to go. So-
Yeah, and that's.
And we, you know, we have, well, I don't know if you applied for it, but we have the Muskego police chief that retired, that, wanted to become a supervisor, you know, but if he's gonna apply for it, he can be on the committee. We just gotta get the thing out there, so we're ready to go.
right.
See you later, thank you. See you guys. And my other question is, when Chief put his retirement in January 5th, can't we go back and to him and say, hey, you know, we need you to stay on, split the difference with us and stuff, we had to.
Yeah, it was first April 8th, and then it was moved up to
It is, but you know,
January
you do
5th.
January
so
5th,
it's
it's
a
like
lot
all
of
the
time.
vacation, sick
You
time.
can't
stuff
force
like that.
somebody though, if he puts it in, he puts it in.
Yeah,
He puts it in, but we can also change the date to December 31st. Then you wouldn't get any of that stuff.
Now that we could do too.
yeah,
I've been with union things before and
I know.
different things, and it's, you know, give or take. Something to consider.
So what,
On your job posting, what, time limit are we gonna put on that they have to have the paperwork in?
No matter what, you can put it, like, please respond within 2 or 3 weeks or by this date, you're always gonna get some afterwards. When I look at things, I never exclude anything that comes my way, I use Indeed a lot, we could put it on Indeed if we want to, I don't know if you can follow for, of this, Wiley Net would be the first
Yeah.
resource.
Mhm.
Then we will be out in 2 weeks to see what kind of resumes we're getting. We're getting nothing, then we gotta expand out. This type of position, we may have to go to a recruiter or a headhunter to find a good quality. Again, we're a town, we're not a village, we're not a city, but we're a bigger town than oversees the village. So we have more.
Yes. So they're already receiving, because they put the police officer one on Wiley Net, which I didn't know that they had done that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that.
And I think they've already got like 9.
They're gonna come in, yeah.
It
Any
saves the
big city
deadline,
wants to get out of it.
right. So I think the biggest thing that the board needs to do today is to authorize one of the lieutenants or whoever, because Heather and I don't know the job. And, you know, put it on Wiley Net. And
Well,
You guys
you know,
wanna set a
we're in
time
open
frame?
session now, I'll make a motion, you mean, I see one email come in, somebody wanted to be the interim chief and things, so we got a backup plan in place if we go that route, or we could, you know, look again to bring in a temp chief from somewhere, you know what I mean? If we decide so elected to do.
Okay.
So I'd make a motion that we choose one of the lieutenants to be, get on Wiley Net for us. Does the board have any thoughts about what lieutenant they want to use?
Think of the chief do this?
We could, I guess. I don't know.
Chief's the one that gave me that one, so.
Yeah, but I'm fine with Matt doing it.
I would say have the chief do it. That way you sort of eliminate the 2 lieutenants, in case they both wanna apply.
Ask the chief to have it done, and then he can decide whether he does it or has a lieutenant do it.
Well, does it
That's
anyway.
now it is his desk, and he can decide how.
I'm fine with that.
Well, it should be approved by the liaison and the chairman, I
Right.
think, before it gets posted. though.
you can
I
make
would
the
suggest.
recommendation, you know,
Like for the salary, I think we should just do that depending on qualifications.
Yeah, I'm
60,
good with that.
60 is, you know,
Right.
that's way generous.
and we need to make sure that it states in there that it's a working,
What it
wanna make
is,
sure
I
it's a
don't like the way
working
it's
chief.
not really worded document, but it's better than.
There was, like 10 other ones that were on there. I think Chief just pulled that one off. I didn't realize that there was like one place that officers and law enforcement
Oh,
would
I've
go
done that
to.
for a while, yeah, yeah, we'll get people that, like lieutenants or captains on walk, that wanna come up here.
Yeah,
They just wanna get out and walk.
and. well, they-
Or receive.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So Bob and I will sit down, we'll get the recommendation from chief for the interim. I guess for the posting, you know, we'll make sure that everything is updated. It's a working chief, we go outside. We have, depending on how long this would take, we set a date, you know, to have everything, resumes in by, and then we do the interviews like we did with the officers.
You know, and,
We'll just have chief get on it now, get a draft, get you guys to approve it and get it on.
yeah,
So
and we already have an applicant, so,
An outsider.
an outside applicant.
My recommendation, I would first get this job thing done, don't talk about interim right now, we have
No.
another month to wait.
Yeah.
You just said in the beginning, you're gonna do it, work on
Right, so
interim,
we're just
don't worry about
posting
that
the
right
job.
now.
Okay,
No,
I mean, let things play their course.
get it posted, put it, I was thinking, put, post on there, they have to be in by November 30th. That gives us a month to review it.
Work notes will take them after, I mean.
Dale, or not Dale, Doug, I would say, get them in just before Thanksgiving,
Okay.
and then you have an extra week of more to follow up.
I mean, how long would it
That's
take?
3
to get
weeks,
this
we
up
get
and
the
get it
draft in a week, that's two.
Not long, once you guys establish what you wanna say. it
Because they're
takes-
already looking, if they're looking by now,
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm sure the-
and this is the time of year, most
Thing
people are
is, if
thinking
you
about
can't put it in
retiring,
on a timely
or-
basis, then you shouldn't be considering.
I mean, being done.
by November 24th.
Well, I'll go back to like this, school board superintendents, they had a certain date, that was it, afterwards, sorry, this was our date. If
Well-
you can't get it on a timely basis, then really you don't want the job.
But nowadays, though, it's.
And it's so easy with a computer.
Yeah,
Yeah, but we don't know when we can get from this by now, we may have to go other places. So I don't wanna lock us into a date saying we gotta have it all resumes by this. If we have to go to a headhunter or an association or something like that, we're gonna leave our doors open a little bit.
Mhm.
Do you think a month
24th
is too
a
long?
Friday, so-
I mean, we're already cutting ourselves short.
Yeah,
What's
I
that?
would do 3 weeks, and it gives you time to review them before a meeting, right?
Okay. 2 weeks then.
2.5, 3 weeks, I don't know.
Yeah, but it's the board's decision.
Yeah, you see the 24th is on Friday.
Yeah, 24th is a Friday, the 17th, the previous Friday.
24th?
The 27th is our budget meeting.
Oh, okay.
Has to be.
Probably,
Doesn't show on
yeah.
there.
Probably. I also just don't wanna limit us, you know, and make it too soon that,
Well, we can still take them, but at least you guys can get them and start reviewing them.
yeah.
That's what's gonna take some time, is once you get them in and start reviewing them and comparing them.
I suspect they'll come in pretty quick.
Yeah.
Oh, so do I.
We already got a whole bunch for the office.
Okay.
True.
True. So 24th?
What do you guys say?
Well, that's the,
It's the Friday after.
that's the
Friday.
Friday after Thanksgiving.
What's,
That's the Friday after Thanksgiving. Is that the date you want them here by?
I'd make it then the Wednesday.
Yeah,
Okay.
Wednesday the
Before
22nd.
Thanksgiving.
Well, it all depends how quick this goes out.
Well, that's the thing, it's
Well, it
gotta
shouldn't
get,
take-
We're
it shouldn't take
November,
long.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine chiefs are chiefs across the state to some degree, give or take. I think that chief could, and I will use this term because we've been click, copy, paste. You know,
You guys come through, they have to go on the other meeting.
I think somebody's in there. I think
Kathy's in there.
Going to start.
yeah, that's true.
Hey, we'll go to your office.
Yeah, you can go in there often.
Maybe 20th?
that's a winner.
Yeah. Yeah, that gives 3 days before the holiday to review and distribute.
We'll give the chief one day to get it posted.
Yeah.
It shouldn't take that long.
He's not in this meeting, remember?
Yeah.
I do have a question once you guys are done with that. It's on a different topic.
Well, first we gotta do what you guys are gonna do with that, and then we can adjourn the meeting.
I can make a motion, I thought that we were doing. I'll make a motion that we get this posted ASAP, and the chief sends it out early in that, so we see our resumes come in, and we have ended that, what you said, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, right?
Monday the 20th.
Monday 20th, okay, that's fine, I'm fine with that.
Okay,
I'm already.
second?
I'll second it.
All right, any more discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. You have all that, Tina?
Yes, now we just need a motion to adjourn.
Or
I think
we have
the chief
to-
one-
Before you
Chief
adjourn,
understands what.
Huh?
can I just
Yeah.
ask them a question before they adjourn?
Yeah.
No.
So Big Bend had their tragedy occur.
Yeah, I heard that police chief passed.
Yeah, so they're coming to me asking if they can use our one unmarked squad car. Because the number of officers they have, they can't fit in their squads to go to this church for the funeral service. It's tentatively scheduled for, I think, in November. They want to see if they could utilize it for the day. I just wanted your guys' permission. I didn't know.
My only question is, do we have any issues with insurance?
Would be, we could have one of the two officers that work for us
Yeah, Nate or Fur,
drive it, so
Okay.
he's operating it, but I wanted you to be aware of it.
Okay.
I think that's,
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a good idea.
and Chief, you're the one doing the posting.
Yeah,
So a
before you-
timeline
Yeah.
to get,
Yeah, well, I guess. Did you, whatever you're utilizing, we have to sit down and whatever it is. Yeah, I can get it posted, or we can get it posted, but you just have to have a timeline of when you want it posted and how long you want it open and.
Yep, we got
We got
that.
that.
November 20th
Yeah.
is when we want the,
Just needs to be a little proofreading. It says mayor and.
Yeah.
Right, that was the one, so.
yeah.
Yeah.
I had pointed out, it was just, I thought it was pretty descriptive.
Okay,
I think we leave out the dollar figure and just say, depending on experience for the salary, so.
okay.
All right, I'll
Thank
work
you.
with
Thank you.
Tina on that, thanks.
Okay, great, thank
All
you.
right, so we have everything, we're good? All right.
Board approval of the police squad and all that.
I would think that'll be under the
That's a liaison thing and chief can make the decision. We've done it before. They're all going to funerals, that's what the problem is.
Yeah, great. All right, then motion to adjourn.
We're not doing the budget?
I'll second.
We're not doing the budget
That's
workshop?
separate meeting.
Oh,
That's
okay.
right after.
Was it? Okay, I didn't look at the agenda, sorry.
Thanks, good meeting adjourned
Thanks, Megan.
to 17.